The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Health from the Inside Out. I am delighted to be with you. I'm Dr. Cutter, surgical oncologist here in Los Angeles, California, and also practicing in other states like Colorado and Arizona and New York, although not so much so with what's going on. But I am delighted to be here in the studio with an extraordinary co-host today, Dr. Randall Maxey. And you've met him before. He is a leading nephrologist. He's an MD, PhD. He is a intellectual genius and a business maven and so well accomplished. So we're going to have a really good conversation today. We're going to concentrate on a few different topics. One thing we want to talk about is opening Los Angeles. Los Angeles is reopening, so we want to talk about that from a practical standpoint, some things to expect, how to keep yourself safe as things open up, but still getting out there, getting some fresh air, mixing and mingling to a limited extent. But we also want to talk about things like vaccines. You know, vaccine development is really the cornerstone of getting things back to normal. So we do want to cover that as well. And we're going to have some surprises in for you today. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Randall Maxey. How are you?
I'm very good, Dr. Cutter.
That's good.
You must have talked to my mama about my CV. I'm very glad to be with you. You're an outstanding physician. I'm glad to partner with you on getting this information out. And we do have a guest who's going to join us very shortly, who's an epidemiologist, a specialist in pediatric infectious diseases. And we want her to make some comments on the vaccines especially and the clinical treatment. And I don't know if she's on the line yet.
Yeah, she's on the line. But, you know, before we bring her into the conversation, let's just talk for about a minute about vaccines and the role that the vaccine has in this whole pandemic. You know, everyone is trying to push that process and accelerate it. So that's why I'm glad we have our special guest so we can talk about it from a practical standpoint. But, you know, from your perspective, why is it that everyone is pushing so hard for the vaccine? What role does it play in addressing the coronavirus?
Well, a vaccine can be a game changer. Vaccines in the past have managed to take out, so to speak, smallpox, totally eradicated it. It has eradicated polio, measles, a number of things. So vaccines have been I won't use the word miracle, but they've been miraculous in protecting the human species from things that used to wipe us out. There's a lot of information, but basically a vaccine is a way to utilize something to stimulate your immunity. And there are a number of types. You can actually kill an infecting agent, and it's called a killed virus, or you can attenuate it by irradiating it with ultraviolet light or something, and it still gives an antigenic response, meaning that the body will generate substances from the line of so-called immunity cells or B cells, and the body can make an antibody to that offending agent without you suffering the disease.
So it's like priming the pump, right?
It's priming the pump.
You get the body used to seeing this thing floating around and saying, hey, I'm going to go after you because you don't belong here, but you don't get sick in the process necessarily of getting the vaccine, right?
Now, for sure, there is no medicine, including plain distilled water, which cannot have a side effect in some people. So are there side effects with vaccines? Certainly there can be. But we have to measure the benefit of them versus the danger of them. And usually we look at that analysis that something is more beneficial than it is harmful.
Right.
Dr. Cutter is a surgeon. She's used to wearing these masks all the time.
But not outside of the OR. This thing is not comfortable, but hey, we have to do it. So we are respecting the guidelines with wearing our masks. You can see that we're 6 feet apart. And, wherever you are, we want to really model this for you, that you should be practicing this.
We should be 9 feet, but the studio isn't big enough. But so vaccines are something that are very important. Some vaccines, it takes years and years to make.
Yes.
10 years or more. So the government and scientists here are trying to make it in a matter of months. We'll see.
Yeah.
But hopefully it will. It will, when enough people are immune, and that's called herd immunity, I believe, that it will prevent the disease from having such devastating effects on a large amount of people, or they will have an attenuated effect or less effect on people. Now, I'm using just lay words because the field of immunology is extremely difficult to understand.
Yes.
But so we're being more simplistic than it actually is. But hopefully they will find a vaccine or several vaccines. Now, individual responses can be different. Ethnic responses can be different. Genetics of different people may or not make a particular vaccine valuable for them. And there are a number of reasons that vaccines can fail. But why don't we ask our rating expert, who's a good friend of both Dr. Cutter and myself. She is a physician, graduated from Harvard College of Medicine, I believe. She is from the state of Mississippi, and she's the founder of the Association of Black Women Physicians, and she is a pediatric epidemiologist and infectious disease specialist.
Okay, so we will talk to her. Let's put our headphones on and see if we can get Dr. Jessie Sherrod into the conversation. Dr. Sherrod, are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here. How are you, Dr. Cutter and Dr. Maxey?
We are doing just fine. We're so glad to have you with us today. And Dr. Maxey wanted to get you in on the conversation about vaccines at this point.
So Dr. Sherrod and I have been hosting a phone call for the past few months, and she has been giving invaluable expert information. And we wanted to have you give us a short piece of information on vaccines, their use, their value, and even discuss a couple of the controversies around them and why they would be good for us or not.
Yeah.
And first, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The other thing I wanted you to talk about, though, also is the time frame to develop vaccines, because I think sometimes there's this kind of myth going on out there where if one of our political leaders says we can do this in 2 months, that it could be done in 2 months. And so people need to really understand that to develop something safely and something that can be given to the population, it's a process, and those safeguards are there for a reason. So if you could touch on that as well, I think that would be helpful for the public to understand.
Yeah, I think first, let me just clarify, I'm not a vaccine expert. I have a lot of experience with vaccines because I'm a pediatrician, and we do the routine childhood immunizations on up through adolescence. But I have sat on the advisory committee on immunization practices for the Center for Disease Control. And from that experience, I got a good look at how vaccines are made, and as I'm going to call him Reverend Dr. Maxey has already alluded to.
Reverend Dr. Deacon Maxey.
Yeah, he has alluded to the value that the society has received from vaccinations. This particular pandemic, as you can see, is just wreaking havoc on our lives, and the virus is very virulent, and people are thinking that the only salvation is a vaccine.
Well, fortunately, there are some other options like monoclonal antibody efforts that are undergoing and
Of
things like
course.
that. So, yeah.
Of course, there are a lot of treatments out there. We now have one medication that has been condoned, and it's called remdesivir, which is an antiviral that has been used in other situations. But I'm not really that overwhelmed with the data on remdesivir, simply because I went through the studies with one of the reps from the company. And if you look at the trials, the patients they were treating were mild and moderate. They didn't have any patients in the trial that she described to us with serious ARDS. And, you know, that is what really kills the patient.
But Dr. Trott, can we stay on the viruses, on the vaccines for a minute before we get into the other treatment?
Well, she brought up the clinical trials, yeah. So they're out there, but the vaccine thing, and I think I'm going to quote one of the Harvard professors who I saw on CNN. He's the first person who's come out with a realistic point of view, and I don't even remember his name. I think his last name was Blade. But he said he didn't understand, and I've been saying this for a while. We had very difficulty in developing a vaccine against influenza.
Exactly.
I mean, even the influenza vaccine that we have, the H1N1, it's only 50% effective.
Right.
Now, it is playing a role in cutting down on the morbidity and mortality related to influenza, but it's not a panacea. And so because of that history and our history of having difficulties in developing RNA vaccines, I have a lot of reservations about whether this vaccine that they're talking about, and there are about over 100 different trials going on, but only 8 out of that 100 have kind of surfaced as possibilities, and I think 4 of them are in the United States. 3 of them are in China, and 1 is in the UK, I believe. But even so, the timeline is usually about 15 years. And we're talking about trying to develop a vaccine, an RNA vaccine, for a very virulent organism in 4 months, 1 year, 2 years. It just doesn't seem realistic. Now, I know that we have advanced a lot in technology, being able to, decode the genome and all of that. But still, you got to do the clinical trials because you have to put so much other stuff in, like the adjuvants and all of that the people react to. You got to be very careful and do large numbers of people in the clinical trials.
But are you negative
benefits
on developing the vaccine, or just hesitant that it's going to be done in a timely fashion?
Oh, I'm hesitant that it's going to be done within the short period of time that they are pushing.
Let's talk about why a little bit, because, people don't understand what it takes to develop a vaccine, right? There's at least, you could break it down into a series of steps. So you've got your exploration, there's a preclinical phase, the clinical development, then you've got 3 phases of that clinical part. The phase 1, which is really the safety of it, and then, or toxicity, I should say, and then phase 2, looking for adverse effects, and then phase 3 for efficacy.
Right, you're right on top of it. And so those, because of the 3 stages, that's why I have a lot of reservations. Exactly. No, I am not against trying to develop a vaccine for this outbreak. We need whatever we can come up with, because I'm not convinced that we have a clinical drug that's going to cure it right now. Right now, our thing is prevention, which seems to be working quite, it's working a little bit. We still have mortality, but we've been able, especially in the state of California, I think we've done tremendous with our preventive measures.
Let me ask you a question on vaccines in general. There's been a large community of people who are against vaccines in general.
Right.
And as a physician and scientist, what's your take on vaccines in that sphere? And if one came about that had been well researched, what would you recommend your patients, and in particular the community that you represent?
Yeah, well, we have to see how things go.
I gave you a
concept. The thing about science, Randall, the thing about science is that the fallacy of the scientific method is the fact that no individual is an average. The scientific method is based on averages.
You're correct.
No one individual patient is an average.
That's the salient point. That's it right there.
So you got individuals out here that you've used the scientific process to come up with this vaccine, but it's not going to tell you how a large population of people are going to react. There are going to be side effects, and you said that early on. Yeah. There's no medication, no pharmaceutical without side effects.
So I'm giving you a question as a public health officer, if you were.
Yeah, if I were.
Hold on. If there has been...
It's not a trap.
If it has been, based upon what we know, a well-run trial, and it's gotten approval, and you respect the research, and now I'm saying, given that basis, would you recommend that people use it?
Yeah, it would depend really on the process and you know.
I gave you
I know you gave me the construct, but you know I have a lot of reservations about the systems that are currently in place. You know, we had the DPT polio, and then we found out it had mercury in it. It went through all of the systems. I was religiously giving it to my patients.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And then we find out that the accumulated dose of mercury in the vaccine was too much.
But you know what's interesting?
And they finally came out and admitted it.
But it's interesting what you're saying, because what you're saying, you're kind of educating the public from the standpoint of, look, there may be a vaccine that's developed, okay? But we need to scrutinize the process that was used to develop it. And then once it's developed, you can't hang your hat on it, right? Because it might work for you, but it may not work for your significant other or your kids or your mother or something like that, because everybody isn't just this one person that is the average of the study, right? Everybody's an individual. So that variability means that you might get the vaccine, but it's not going to necessarily have the impact on you that we expect, right?
Well,
and that's my reservation. See, I think you have to also develop the constructs for people who may react to it or people who may not react to it. And see, those variables often are not looked at in the process. They just kind of throw in an average, do a short, small clinical trial, and then recommend the vaccination and say, okay, but, you know, we were trained in the clinical scholars program, you know, after I left traditional medicine and went into the Robert Wood Johnson clinical scholars program.
Right.
And this is with drugs and everything. They told us never take the drug when it first comes out, because they really haven't done the quote-unquote true clinical trial, which is the first large population of people who gets it.
The hundreds
so
of
if
thousands.
this vaccine, so what I'm telling you, if this vaccine came out, you need to wait a couple of years before you take it, because it's going to take a couple of years for them to give it to a large number of people to find out the true side effects.
Let's have a clinical fight. I'm going to definitely oppose you. And the reason
now, Dr. Cutter, I really appreciate your support here. You're doing really good.
Let me tell you why I'm going to oppose you.
Here we go.
There's a lot of information coming from parts unknown, whether it be right-wing, whether it be agents of foreign governments telling African Americans, when the vaccine comes, you don't need it. You don't need to wear a mask. You don't need to wear gloves. You don't need to mitigate anything.
Now, who's saying that, Randall?
A lot of people. It's on the news. It's being put out. So
African Americans?
Yes. So what I'm telling you, let me finish what I'm saying. If I respect the research as it's done, and I understand that any medicine can potentially have a side effect, as a public health officer, I'm saying if there's something out there that can stop the majority of our people from dying, I'm going to be fairly positive about it and not necessarily listen to all this negative information that's coming out from the other side, whoever that is, that will make our people more vulnerable. Now,
well, I think that we have to become more educated.
Hold on.
No, go ahead.
I'm respecting everything that you say. But if there's something that can save a significant number of our people, after I research it as a physician, I feel obligated to give them the best of my advice, understanding that we all have the reservations that you have. I'm not against that.
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
I just want to jump in here from this standpoint. So as a surgical oncologist, someone who focuses on cancer, studies are the backbone of how we practice in oncology, right? We rely on studies. And what we found is pretty much uniformly, the studies in cancer treatments are really geared towards a very skewed population. So we find that most studies are done in this very kind of homogeneous population. A lot of times it's male-centered. Sometimes it is a little balanced with female, but it's a very skewed population. So even though, and I'm not for or against a vaccine, I'm not really going there, but I'm just saying, I think it's important, I think Dr. Sherrod made a really good point about really scrutinizing the process. Oh, maybe I made that point. So I'm complimenting my own point.
Yeah, well, you did make a good point about scrutinizing.
Maybe I made a good point.
I agree with that. But after we do the scrutiny, then you got to come down on one side or the other.
But here, what I think is even more important? Is more important than vaccine or anything. And I bet you can guess where I'm going with this. Maybe not.
I like that too.
But what I think is the most important thing is healthy, active lifestyle.
You go.
That's really the foundation of it all, because if you can support your immune system can support you. And if you're, if you are looking at what to have for dinner and you're thinking, I could have like this fried protein and, French fries and things like that for dinner, or I could make myself some kale mixed with sweet potatoes and some other things, having more healthful options, taking a walk after dinner every night, working out 3 times a week, plenty of water.
And I agree with you, Dr. Cutter, and Dr. Maxey know that I've been pushing on our Zoom conferences, boosting the immune system.
Yes.
I think our biggest effort should go in trying to prevent getting the infection. And I know that we can't do that 100%, but we need to really make a concerted effort not to get the infection, simply because our culture and our population has already a compromised immune system.
So
that's because we're under chronic unrelenting stress.
Yes.
Chronic unrelenting stress, which equals to, I don't want to use the R word, but that's what it is in our society. So then we have other pre-existing conditions of diabetes, hypertension, obesity. All of those are factors in whether you get an infection. And let me just do my 3 factors that determine whether you get an infection or not.
Number 1.
The first one is the immune status of the host.
Okay.
There it goes. So we said what? Boost up your immune system. The second one is how much contact, how much virus you're exposed to. What is your viral load? How long were you in the company of the virus? All of that has to do with the social distancing that we're doing, wearing the mask, washing our hands, trying to stay out of crowds. Don't expose yourself to the virus.
Don't kiss that girl.
The third factor,
don't kiss her.
And so the third factor is the virulence of the organism. And we know that COVID-19 doesn't play. It is very virulent.
Let me bring up this, because you give me the point. And first of all, we all agree with that, 110%.
Yeah, you keep taking me and trying to pin me down with this vaccine stuff.
No, I'm not.
There are a lot of different variables that you have to look at. I'll tell you this,
oh,
Randall.
my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we inherited a little, squabble here. This is good. This makes for good.
I'm finished with vaccines.
But I think it's friendly.
I want to go to, I respect Jesse more than most people I know.
There you go.
And we talk every week like this. So
This is love.
So now, the White House has put out an edict.
Here we go.
That church services are essential, and basically is thought to be commanding the opening of churches, along with the rest of the country.
Religious services. So the mosques, the temples, everything. They were open about that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of resistance out there. And we do know that some months ago, a group of some 10 bishops and supervisors died when they attended a funeral service of another one, and they were not observing social distancing.
There have been many reports of that. There are one in Georgia, one in Detroit.
Dr. Sherrod, hold on a minute. And in addition, we know that schools and daycare centers are about to open. And I know we all have special concerns about the country opening. We know that wealth is important, but is it wealth instead of health? And I heard a pastor back east say something that he's not going out until they open up the country clubs.
I heard
and the golf courses. But
the golf courses are open. I'm actually going to the driving range on Sunday, you guys. The golf courses are open. I'm very excited about that.
How are we going to handle our kids going to daycare and school, and how are we going to handle this thing about churches? I'm concerned about that, and I know you have some views on that before we get on to some other topics.
Yeah, this is your last topic with us. So what do you think, Dr. Sherrod, about reopening the churches?
Yeah, I think it may be a big risk, and you got to weigh the risk benefits from this. And the population of people who tend to go to church, you need to look at them and the underlying pre-existing condition. I mean, a lot of people we're talking about who like to be in church on Sunday are our people. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of them are already immunocompromised. And if you are, I would stay at home. I mean, if you got diabetes, hypertension, autoimmune disease like lupus and all that stuff, you don't need to be out there in church. Pray at home. God will heal you from your house.
In fact, I'm told that the church is the person, not the building.
There you go.
There you go. Exactly. You can serve God from home. I know that there is a value in human fellowship.
So I was in a conversation last night, Dr. Sherrod, and they were talking about we need something called a Black Health Trust.
A what?
A Black Health Trust. Yeah.
That can provide credible information from respected health professionals. And I know some people are trying to put this together, and we hope to unveil this probably within the next few days, if not sooner. But do you think that could be a source of credible information to our people on how to protect themselves?
Of course. I think that having an advocacy panel with a hotline, with experts, because I think we're having problems accessing the healthcare center, knowing when to go in. I think a lot of people are waiting too late.
That's so true.
To go in, and then when they get there, it's too late, and you can't really do anything.
People are so
sick.
But
people are also being, I've heard, turned away. I've heard of several people who went in 3 times. The 3rd time they were taken in, but then they were too far gone, and they died after couple of days, and we can't have that going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what's your last word with us, Dr. Sherrod, before we let you go?
The last word that I'd like to say is to give the example of me and vaccines. I was in 1977, I was getting ready to go to Africa, and they told me, I was going on a research project with the UCLA, and they told me I needed to take typhoid fever and yellow fever and all this stuff. I took typhoid fever vaccine, and I had typhoid fever.
Wow.
Temperature 104.
Wow.
And I didn't think I was going to wake up the next morning.
Isn't that the exception more than the rule, Dr. Sherrod?
It may be the exception, but what I'm saying is that there are variabilities, and I think you have to look at your own personal situation and decide. That's why it's no clear-cut yes or no. Of course, if it's recommended, it's recommended. But the individual patient, you have to look at their whole comprehensive health status and decide whether this is okay. It shouldn't be. It's not okay for everybody. Right. We know that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
And don't beat me up when I see you.
Well, Dr. Cutter, I just want to commend you for having such a forum available for us to do this kind of discussion. And I think you put out some really good information here. This is really good.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, and thank you for those words. We're going to try to just keep everybody informed and do it in a way that is empowering and a way that people can move forward. I don't want anyone to feel any fear, worry, anger, none of that, because all of that defeats the immune system too.
There
So-
you go. Suppresses the immune system, and
It
fear
does.
is false evidence appearing real.
There
So
you
we have to,
go.
but you know what I think we have to do? We need the knowledge and we need the ability to think about what we're doing. You don't do it just because.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
Right.
each individual is different.
That's true.
That's true.
I think
Okay.
that's,
Thank
I think
you
that's
so
the best
much.
word. Thank
Thank you.
you. Good to hear
Bye-
from you.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Dr. Sherrod.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was fun having Dr. Sherrod on for a little bit. She's very knowledgeable and very dynamic. I wish you guys could all see her and meet her because she's very, high energy and enthusiastic, and she's very much focused on healthful practices, not just for her patients, but for herself. She's very health conscious and very good at managing her own conditions. So thank you so much, Dr. Sherrod, for joining us. What I do want
I'm
to
going
talk
to have
about...
some vegetarian spaghetti with her.
There you go. I do want to talk about some other alternatives to vaccines because there are some efforts there in some other areas. You guys, it's hard to breathe in these things. Am I right? I mean, I've been trying to walk, work out, and everything, and these is driving me crazy, but I have mine on. So does Dr. Maxey. So we are true blue to our mask situation. But, I wanted to talk about things like the monoclonal antibodies, and also about repurposing some drugs. There's a lot of efforts going on out there where they're trying to look at drugs that are already in existence and see if they can repurpose them. And I think that's good. It's in parallel with the vaccine development.
Of course.
And then the monoclonal antibody development. So
Okay.
do you have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, let's start with what you can do in your everyday life.
Okay.
And we actually wrote a brief paper, which I hope we'll have published soon, just about the simple things you can do. One is taking so-called micronutrients.
Okay, so he's skipping over my question, just so
No,
everybody
I'm getting
knows
to
he's
that.
going to do.
I just wanna do the
he's
simple
veering
things
off
first.
into the health, but that's okay. We like it.
Like we talked about things that you can do tonight.
What?
Okay.
Okay,
And
we can
things
do
you
that now.
tonight. So, for example, I'm taking something. Don't you laugh? I'm taking prenatal vitamins.
Okay, and
And
we've always thought that. No, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna say it. You know what I was going to say.
But prenatal vitamins have the micronutrients in it,
Okay,
and that is very important. Now, you can get those same micronutrients by eating right.
you can.
And eating green leafy vegetables that have nitric oxide production ability, L-arginine, and
That's
things
right.
like that.
And my favorite is the green drink. I think it's great, having the vegetables. Some people say, I don't like this vegetable. I don't like that. Make a green drink, right? Put it in the blender, mix it up with a little, not fruit juice, but green tea, water, something like that as a base, and you can drink your micronutrients and your macronutrients.
Now, I'm a little bit different on that. I think you should eat the greens, eat the fruit.
I do too, but
And
some people who won't.
Some people, when you blend something, when you make a juice, that releases the sugar too much too quick, and you get a spike. And a lot of our people are pre-diabetic, so they feel that they can drink a healthy drink, and it's not harmful. But the ravages of diabetes and glucose is not the level of the glucose itself, but the fact that it does a spike rise. So I say it's better to eat the fruit,
We
eat the
know
greens,
that.
eat the vegetables.
It's better to
It's
have because you get the fiber with when you eat a piece of fruit, you bite into it, you get the skin and all that. But
Yeah.
in absence of that, you
So-
can have a green drink.
So plus I've got 15 blenders that my wife has at home. If she buys another blender, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I recommend eat the fruit, eat the greens, eat the vegetable. If you can, if you got to juice it, go ahead. But I just think we're making those people money with all those blenders. So those things are important. I also recommend vitamin C, 2,000 milligrams a day.
Okay.
I recommend vitamin D3, 50,000 units a week. And, of course, I recommend people walk, exercise at least 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week. If you can walk, and there's no reason you can't go outside with your mask on and do physical distancing, or if you have a treadmill at home, or you can run around your bedroom, whatever you can do exercise at home. That is very important. And one thing before we get off, and not now, but I want to talk about the mental health of our kids during this process, but go on with your monoclonal antibodies.
We can, I think that's something that we need to deal with really need to give that some focus. So I don't know if we can cover every single topic today, but I do want to talk about this reopening California and reopening Los Angeles because we're going to be hearing about recommendations of what to open, right? What where you can go, how you can enjoy yourselves. We did talk a little bit about church. Now, some states and some areas are opening their churches, but they have a lot of safeguards in place. So, for example, only 25% of the church can be filled. So, in other words, there's plenty of space for the social distancing. So that may mean that there have to be a lot more services over the course of a day for everyone to be able to get into church. And of course, you wear your mask. There's no handshaking, but, with my patients, I always do a little elbow bump sometimes, or, that type of thing. And of course, I have to examine them with my hands, and we, of course, wash before and after in doing that. So that's one thing. What do you think about that restriction for the churches, the 25% full, wearing a mask, and, of course, keeping from hand contact?
I think that would be excellent if you have to go.
Yeah.
I don't think that the real church is in you, and it does not require the physical gathering until it's time. I'm very concerned about doing this before it's time. I'm very concerned that black people in particular are being encouraged to do things that are dangerous to them. We're being encouraged to be the tip of the spear. We're driving the buses. Mm-hmm. We're cleaning the behinds. We're washing the hotel rooms. We're doing all the things that are dangerous.
Okay, so let's talk about what he's alluding to. So essential workers. Who are the essential workers right now? It's black and brown people primarily. So those are the people who are the nursing assistants, who are taking care of those patients, those COVID patients in the hospital. The people who are working in transit, so who are driving buses and trains and things like that, coming in contact with the public. We all know the huge sacrifice that the grocery store workers have been making. You guys, we have to really, let's give them some love and respect when we go to the grocery store, because these people are minimum wage workers. They are working hard. They're dealing with the public. And do you really realize that at the very beginning, they had no protective equipment? So they were serving you, making sure you had your food and your toilet paper. Right, because we had the toilet paper craze.
So you hit a main point.
So we need to respect them.
Not toilet paper, but we need to make sure that if you do have to go back to work, speak strongly that they must provide you with the protection that you need, whether it be personal protective equipment,
right,
social distancing. Do not trade your life for somebody else making money.
Right.
You got to do that, whether you have a union or what. But you must protect yourself.
So you weren't with us in the last show, but we did a lot of talking in the last show about being more innovative about going back to work. Going back to work doesn't mean that everybody needs to go back to the office the way it was. Maybe somebody works from 7 to noon, and then the next group comes in from noon to 6. You have to work a little bit differently. You work at home 3 days a week, and you come in 2. We have to figure out very safe ways for people to go back to work and earn a living. One thing we're realizing is that, there's a lot of women out there who are bearing the brunt of all this. Yes. So the woman is at home, working from home. She's taking care of kids. They're supposed to be being educated. And on top of that, she's got to plan the meals, prepare the meals, do the laundry, clean, and all of that. Husbands, work with your wives, okay? Help them out. Partner with them. This is a very important thing. Women are really under a lot of stress these days, and I think there's a lot of women bearing the brunt of this too, and that kind of stress can also make them probably a little bit more susceptible to catching a number of things, and maybe even the coronavirus as well. What do you think about the households and how to manage working from home and going back to work? What can we do?
You can't see my smile under the mask.
I can see it in your eyes.
First of all, I think you're very astute at what you've been saying. I'm going to bring up something very interesting. I think if you're married and you have a family and you've been quarantining at home, or even if you've been working and you keep yourself social distance and safe when you come home and you've had your shower, there is no reason to socially distance yourself from intimate relationships. That's a part of your mental health to do that.
How did we get there? How did we get there?
Because we're talking about keeping the immune system, the spirit, the mind. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or isolating with, to have as normal a family life as you can. You should find a way within your confines of your home, of people you are quarantining with or is as you can, and that is very important.
You haven't heard the jokes yet, have you? There's going to be a whole bunch of Corona babies coming out in November, December, January. So I don't think that that's a problem. That part is not an issue, but I really think it's keeping the household going. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Those same expectations you're talking about maintaining intimacy. How can you maintain intimacy when you're cooking, cleaning, laundry, working, homeschooling, and preparing meal? I mean, that's too much, right, for one person. So that's why I'm saying you have to partner.
And that's true. But just think back to times of slavery. When times were really hard, they still had 10 and 12 children. So all that can be done, Dr. Cutter.
I don't even know what to say to that one. Okay, I can't even respond to that one. I don't even know where to go. Okay. So we talked about the churches reopening. And we know that the golf courses are reopening, which I think they should have been open from the beginning, because let's face it, there's a big giant park where very few people on it, and nobody's ball is ever right next to each other. So I think that that's okay. The beaches are open for active use,
but you
not
can't
passive use.
Sunbathe.
So active use. So that means running, walking, surfing, swimming. But if you're laying on the beach on your towel, that's a no-no. Okay, so that's a no good. But the other thing, and we were talking about this before we started taping today, is that we're both really wanting to go to a restaurant. I haven't been to a restaurant in forever, and I really want to go and sit down and have somebody bring me a nice cocktail, happy hour, and things like that. How do you think we can open up the restaurants? What do you think is a safe way to do it?
Well, I read an article today that talked about an ultraviolet light shower. And these are being invented to rather hang from the ceiling like the heater lights now. Okay. We also know that ultraviolet light has a certain amount of toxicity.
Okay.
But we know the ranges of the frequency of the light that is toxic. So they're distributing these mostly from Korea, I saw. And this will allow some matter of sterilization. I saw another disturbing video on CNN the other day where they used a UV light to light up the spread of a supposed coronavirus.
Uh-huh.
So it is dangerous, and even if you're 9 feet away and you're talking like we're talking with no mask, this stuff is aerosolized, not just droplet spray, and it can get across the thing and infect everything on the table.
So what are you saying? So you're saying that just no restaurant activity, or what are you saying?
It does not make sense at this moment. We have to put some pleasures aside.
Even outdoors? Even outdoor seating, because that's one thing that I've heard a lot about is, hey, why don't we just have outdoor seating only, and the tables spread a certain distance apart. What do you think about that?
That's better.
Yeah. And the indoor seating, of course, is going to be very spread out. You're not going to be back to back, with another customer. So what do you think?
Years ago, my first professional license was as a funeral director and embalmer.
Oh, my goodness.
I understand death.
Oh, my goodness.
And I believe that people are minimizing what this virus can do. Now, not in a fearful sense, but in the sense that we still need to use protective measures. We need to have distancing.
Okay.
And as much as I'd like to join you for that cocktail, it's not time yet. It's not time that the places have got this figured out. They don't have the virus figured out. They don't have the table situation figured out. They don't have anything figured out.
Okay, so you're saying even if the restaurant's open and the tables are spread apart and all that kind of stuff, it's a no-go for you. No-go for you.
In terms of being in the public, no.
Okay. And no outdoor restaurant seating or anything?
I said in the public, no. For me.
It's fine. That's fine.
Okay. And professionally, I don't recommend it. So, you've been inside for 3 months, another few months ain't going to kill you.
Okay. So what about things like, they're also starting to talk about things like, I saw somewhere where they wanted to start opening some more personal things like tattoo parlors and, hairstylists and barbers, things like that. What do you think?
Let me throw that back on you. What do you think about that?
Well, this is how I feel. First of all, the tattoo parlor thing, I cannot figure out what makes that an essential business. So I don't think that we necessarily need to do that.
And that's a good place to get hepatitis and
a lot of
HIV
other diseases,
and everything else.
So I'm not really for that, but I'm not, but I'm not really part of that industry. So maybe there's some elements of that I don't know about, but I'm not really seeing it. Now, this whole grooming thing is becoming an issue. It's funny because, as a woman, women get their hair done and everything. But I would say over the past month or two, all the male surgeons in the hospital are like, oh my gosh, my hair is so long, it doesn't look right and everything. So, I mean, it would be good to find ways of doing grooming, and I think we can do that. But I don't think the old paradigm is going to work. So we need to find a different way of getting our grooming and those services done. But I think there's a way to do that.
Vanity can kill you.
This is not vanity. This is hygiene, because if hair is too long, it's getting in the way and all of those things.
I talked
it's a bad
to
thing.
an 83-year-old lady today.
And your hair is cut. How did you get your hair cut?
I cut it at home.
Okay, you're taking care of it.
There's an 83-year-old lady had on the phone. Could barely talk on the phone. She was so short of breath.
Oh, no.
She has ventricular dysfunction in her heart.
That's heart dysfunction,
And
ventricle.
She needs to have certain things done for her heart.
Mm-hmm.
Her main complaint was she hasn't gone to the hairdresser, and her hair was dirty, and that was more important than her heart. What is our value system that things that will kill you are more important than anything else?
Well,
So-
ladies and gentlemen, I think we can agree that that's more the exception than the rule. Am I right? I mean, I don't really see everybody saying, I definitely need to get my hair done and I don't care what it takes. That's an individual. I don't really think that that's pervasive. But I'm hearing you say no go on the salons and
Right.
everything too.
I'm saying that too.
Okay.
I mean,
What about retail? Now, some of the smaller retail, so of course we've had Target's been open, the grocery store has been open, Costco, all these big box stores. And so now they're saying, okay, you can open, but it's curb service. And the pushback from the smaller retail, they're saying, we're not really set up for that. We don't have these big websites and this ability. Why can't we have inside traffic the same way that the big box stores do so that, we can have business? But we will, of course, practice what they practice, the plexiglass barrier, the social distancing, and the PPE. What do you think about that for the smaller businesses?
I think the most important thing individually is to exercise common sense.
Okay, so what do you
And
think
that
is common
common
sense
sense-
about that?
If I see a place where there's a lot of people in a enclosed place and there's no way to socially distance, I'm not going in there.
Of course, but we're saying this is a socially distanced store. You know how everybody waits in line, so we have a new society here, right? It used to be that you just walk into the store and you do what you need to do. Now you have to wait in line to go into the store. So it would be the same situation in the smaller retail outlets that you would wait in line. There could only be a certain number of people inside.
Well,
you are admitted.
That's fine, but if
Okay.
I can call up and order it and have it delivered, better.
Okay, so of course we prefer delivery, but you're okay with opening up some other retail
Well,
outlets.
on a point-by-point basis, you can do that. But I'm saying
Okay.
what I'm telling my patients and
Uh-huh.
the people that I have influence of, if you don't have to go, don't get it delivered to you. Call up, pick it up outside. You don't need all this social mingling for right now. Is it worth your life? So every time you see something, decide, is this worth my life? Then go ahead and do it.
Okay, very good, very good. Now, there's some people who haven't been able to go back to work, right? They're in a job where they can't do their job right now, and, there's no way to work from home, so they've been furloughed or, fired, let
If
go.
they get
or
fired,
what have you.
they can't get unemployment.
Right, unfortunately. So now, what do you think are some creative ways for people to get back into the workforce? Do you have any thoughts on that? Any
I
recommendations for
thought,
people?
first of all, again, you need to demand of your employer that you be protected as is appropriate for your position.
If you have a position, but what if you don't? What if you don't have a position anymore? And they have, like I said, you've been furloughed, fired, whatever, and you need to get work.
Well, you try to do something from home, you try to do something innovative, but you're making a choice. And the choice is, can you go back, for example, these meat packers, where you have hundreds of people in a place that's dirty anyway,
Yeah.
a slaughterhouse, and they can't socially distance, they don't
Yeah.
have PPE.
Yeah.
So
That blew my mind.
Yeah.
When we don't, there's a lot of things that we don't know in this country about how things are produced. You know, we just go to the store and there it is, nicely packaged for us. But when you start unpeeling the layers as to how we get these things, you know, you realize there's a big social toll to
So
that.
the rule has to be common sense. And when you're talking about life and death, like, I would die for a lot of things. Most of them include I would take a bullet for my wife, my kids, etc.
Aw.
But I wouldn't take a bullet just to take a bullet.
Okay,
know?
but now you're still working. You're one of those people that's working. You're a physician like I'm a physician. I've been working through this whole thing. I think I had 3 days off, and I've been working, you know, pretty much through this. I am a little tired, so I'm going to, you know, get some good rest this weekend. But, you know, as somebody who has been working and you're looking at people who want to work, do you have any insights for them, people who have lost their jobs?
Again, now, I chose to work and see my patients,
Right.
but my building is locked. You have to knock on the door. You have to answer our questions about your exposure. You come in, we clean your hands and they're sprayed with alcohol.
Excellent.
70%. We put an ear thermometer in and make sure you don't have a temperature. And then we say, how can we help you?
This
And
is best
inside-
practices, ladies and gentlemen. That's
inside
excellent.
We maintain social distancing. I prefer 9 feet instead of 6.
Okay.
We take the patient in a room. As a rule, I wear gloves and a mask. And I don't really do a physical exam unless it's really necessary. I take a good history. I make sure I'm distanced. Occasionally I have to do an exam. I make sure I change my gloves before and after, and I clean them. But there's not a whole lot of contact
Good.
there. It's
Good.
necessary. And there's a lot of anxiety among my patients. They're mostly older. So
Okay.
I have to see them. Some of them need procedures done that can't be done by telehealth.
Yeah.
So you do the best you can.
What do you do with the patient that comes to the door and they said, look, I really need your help. I have a fever. I've been coughing, right? And, you know, I'm having a little shortness of breath here and there. Do you see that patient or you tell them to go to the emergency department? How do you handle that?
Well, the way I handle that, and we've had a conversation with the director of public health for LA County,
Okay.
and they direct us to send them to the public health department.
Okay.
But however, when we send the patient, they get to the public health department
And they send them
and they
home.
send them back.
That's not working.
Yeah. So no, I do not let them in my office. I have an
Okay.
obligation to my staff
Yeah.
and the other patients there. So we're stymied. So when the politicians say you can get all the tests you need, you can get all the treatments you need, that is not true.
Okay.
So a number of people have said, well, we've got tests for you. You can do testing. But if you don't have PPEs or personal protective equipment, you'd be crazy to send your nurse or your assistant out there to test somebody without being protected themselves.
Sure.
So there are a lot of problems here. What this pandemic, on top of an epidemic, has done for me and most people is uncovered the lack of health systems in this country. We thought we were the most advanced country in the world. We clearly are not.
I think we have 1/5 of the cases, you know, in the world. So we don't have 1/5 of the population of the world, but I think
No.
we have 1/5 of the deaths, I think, in the world.
Oh, yeah. And it's not over yet.
It's not over yet.
Now, from a
It's getting a little
scientific
better here,
standpoint,
though, but
we
it's not
do
over yet.
believe that there are going to be several other waves coming back, because we believe that many people
Definitely.
believe, I won't say we, believe that this virus can hide in certain organs
Okay.
and resurface at a later month, a few months later. So we think there may be some other waves of pathology coming back in the future. I don't think it's over yet. Maybe it won't be aerosol, but it will be internal and other ways of infection.
Right. So what I've been trying to communicate not only to, you know, my patients, my friends and things like that, and then also to the viewers and the listeners, you know, this is a new normal. You know, there's not going to be a return to the way things were and we're going to go back. That's going to be a long time from now. So what I advise people to do is find your own way in this new environment. Find a way to live healthfully, find a way to enjoy yourself. You can go outside. You can even meet up with your friends. Make sure they're a nice long distance. You can talk car to car. Be creative about it. You know, I do have a friend that we're going to go and meet up at the driving range, but we're going to be in different stalls. We're going to be 6 feet apart, hitting balls, talking across a distance with our masks on, wearing gloves, our own clubs, and, hitting balls. But we're going to have that social time. We're not going to be able to embrace the way we normally do or anything like that, but we are going to be able to, to get outside. And that's, to me, your biggest social outlet is to get outside. You're not supposed to get close to anybody that's not within your household. So you're supposed to remain that socially distant from someone who's outside of your household. But you can still meet up with people, I think.
I think that's very astute. But let me bring up another point you reminded me of.
Let's hear it.
Okay. And that is looking back in the Bible, when the Israelites came out of Egypt, where they were in captivity, they came out as millionaires.
They did.
And this may be a blessing in disguise, that for the first time we realize that this system in this country is not made for our benefit, especially if we stay the consumers and not the producers.
Okay.
So maybe this is a time when we can take over some of these businesses ourselves that serve our community. And maybe we can ride this wave to prosperity, because if you're on the bad end of the stick, you're not going to do well. Right now, we know that people are out here making a killing of 10 to 20 times the value of these masks and gloves and personal protection, and they're being bought from Korea and China, but they put it over themselves. So this has been the greatest financial boon for a certain segment of our community, which does not include us. So maybe we should be self-sufficient a lot more. Maybe we should have that idea that God put in your brain last year, 2 years ago. Maybe it wasn't such a harebrained idea. Maybe it was a blessing. And maybe we ought to do some of those things. That would be my encouragement.
I'm hearing the beginning of the Dr. Maxey think tank, right? Your think tank for whatever business that you've been contemplating. This is it. He's going to help us, or help everybody to find a way to start those businesses.
It's called an accelerator.
That's right.
We will help that. Now, see,
the Maxey Accelerator.
I'm glad to know that Dr. Cutter, before she was a world-famous surgeon, was a computer engineer and an executive. And we need that brain power, Doc.
Well, look, for a fee, I will set you free.
And for a fee, I will show you how to set me free.
There you go. We'll work together on this. Oh, my goodness. Well, you know what? We covered a lot of ground today. I mean, we went over so many different topics, the importance of vaccines, vaccine development, some of the controversies about vaccines. We cannot just allow that to be a panacea. We also talked about the importance of supporting your immune system. That's through your habits, eating right, drinking right, exercise. And we didn't talk about sleep, but that's an important component too, and decreasing your stress. We also talked about intimacy and the importance of that, also maintaining balance at home, making sure that we're supporting each other in the home and not putting all the efforts on one person while, the other person just does one thing. We have to be in partnership in our households as well. We talked about the development of monoclonal antibodies and also using some previously developed drugs, to combat this. And we also talked about this staged opening approach to the city, how each of these business segments and houses of worship and all these other areas, what propositions are out there and how we think it's going to work. So we covered a lot of ground today, everybody, much more than I thought we would, but that's because we had a dynamic guest here in the studio with us, Dr. Randall Maxey, who is a MD, PhD, and professional extraordinaire. We also had Dr. Jessie Sherrod call in and grace us with her epidemiologic background and give us a lot of insights as well. I'm Dr. Cutter, a surgical oncologist, and we appreciate you joining us, and look for us the next time, okay? Health from the inside out. Thank you, and have a great week.